Hello, hello, and welcome to Malts and Meeples and, well, Top 100 Games of All Time 2022 edition, which basically means these are my 100 favorite games. Now, I'm not doing all 100 games at once. I've been watching along week by week, do 10 at a time, talk about those. So this week we have 60 through 51, rounding out the bottom half of the top 100. Next week, going to jump into that top half there. As pretty normal, I have an old fashioned, this time with the Aztec chocolate bitters. Very good. Nice drink. It's just a classic for me at this point. Obviously, if you've watched a lot of my videos, very common for me to have an old-fashioned. Very uncommon for me not to have a drink, and very common for that drink to be an old-fashioned. Inhaled accidentally. But this part of the top 100 list it actually has a couple of new games on the list, a couple of roll and write games, and then it has one classic that is a combination of a few things, and that classic and another game actually have dropped a fair amount for this list. So let's get to it and start with number 60, one of the new games and one of the roll and writes. We have Long Shot the Dice Game. Long Shot the Dice Game is going to be a horse racing game or a betting game where you're betting on different horses to see if you can make the most money. It's not just that, you're also potentially buying horses. You can manipulate how quickly horses move to let those long shots maybe get a win. Because 1, 2, and 3, those are the most likely horses to win. But if the dice work out, 8 might be able to pull it off. And what I really like about this one is there's a fair amount going on with it. It isn't a light roll and write game. But, if I were to really pick the one thing that stands out to me with this is the fact that, so you roll 2 dice. You roll an 8-sided die and a 6-sided die to basically see how far a horse is going to move. So if I roll an 8 and a 3, the 8 horse will move up 3 spots on the track. But there are all the other numbers on that card as well, including 8 again. And any of those that are X'd out, those horses move up a single spot. So you can really make it so the long shot can win. Even if you only roll it a couple of times, if you start to load it up on other cards when it rolls those couple of times, that means it might start moving up a whole lot more. Plus, then you can buy horses, or there's a cat whisker on the table. You can buy horses. You get paid out if your horse wins second, third. Really fun. Like I said, a little bit more complex. Has that tactile nature with the board that the horses are on. So I think it works nicely. It's one that probably would be higher if I thought it were a little bit easier to teach. There's just a few things like the jockey hat and shirt that don't tie in quite as well thematically, so that can take a few more times to explain if you're not staying on top of it. Then, let's see, that was 60, so 59, we have another new one and another roll and write, Trek 12. This one does 2 things I think that are really interesting for it. And well, three. Two things in how it scores, and one thing in how you place your numbers. And I'm placing the numbers is the biggest part of the game. So 2 dice are rolled, and you have 5 different options you can pick from. You can either go with the highest die, lowest die, difference, combined total, or multiplied total. However, you can never go past 12. So that works well. But how you spend those different things, because you only have a limited number of times you can pick the higher die. And you're looking to create runs and sets. And really, which one is going to be the best for you in a given situation can change up your game a ton. You might have a run that you just never are able to get that gap filled in. But how you score the runs and the sets, I think also works really well. Because you score the highest number in a run or the number in the set. So say I had 3 10s, I would score 10, then 1 additional point for each additional 10. So I would score 12 points. If I have 3 2s, I score 4 points. So you want to push for those higher numbers because, well, let's say I have a run that goes from 10 to 0, so 11 numbers total. It'd be 10 plus an additional 10 for 20. But if I have a run of 5 to 1, so 5 numbers, I get 5 plus 4 of 9. And then you also score bonus points based on your largest run and largest set. Longest run and largest set, I guess. And it's just simple, but it works really well and is very, very fun. A pretty easy one to teach. Now over to 58, we're going to have the Night Cage. This is one I want to play again soon because it's a great Halloween game, a great spooky season game. The Night Cage is a cooperative game where you are, well, prisoners or people who wake up locked in this ever-changing labyrinth. It's so small that you can crawl around, and you can kind of crawl backwards and forwards, you can turn around corners, but you can't actually pass anyone. And you know that you are looking for a key and a portal out of here that needs 4 keys, or 5, depending if you're playing with a 5-player expansion, for it to open and activate. And each player has to have a key at the end of the game. But as you're crawling around with your candle, you're flipping out tiles, and you might flip out a key. Great. If you don't have a key, that means next turn you can go stand on there, grab a key, you're going to be set. Now you just have to find the portal out of there. But if you already have a key and somebody else needs a key, now you might be burning through tiles, potentially portals, as you're waiting there, keeping the key illuminated. Because the second you move away from it, the second you're no longer on that tile or adjacent to it, well, adjacent to it really, as long as you're no longer adjacent to it, because if you go on the tile and leave, it flips over into a pit, you lose the key. If you're adjacent to it and move away from it, so you're no longer immediately next to it, you can't see it with your candle anymore. It disappears. And you go back that way, the labyrinth is going to be different. So you're trying to, sometimes you're just locked in there, burning tiles, burning potential portals in hopes or waiting for somebody to get there to grab that key. And all the while, the stack of tiles, which is kind of, well, it symbolizes your candle, is getting lower and lower and lower. And then there are monsters in that stack of tiles. And those come out. Even the basic ones, the wax eaters, they will shoot wax down every direction away from them the second somebody moves either into their view or out of their view. So not right away when you flip them, but when you move away from them, they will fire. And if they hit anybody, their candle goes out, and now they can only see the tile that they are on. So it's just a surprisingly thematic game for something that's pretty abstract in what it does, but as that candle burns down lower and lower and lower, you really do start to feel the tension in the game. Then at 57, we have Meadow. And I've had a chance actually to play Meadow again recently. I think would probably stay in about the same spot. Mainly because, well, Meadow is a lot of fun. I think it can lean into potentially some analysis paralysis. But this is basically a tableau building game. You are building out kind of landscape in front of you of this meadow that is giving you different symbols. So a grub, you might start out with a tree. Then you get a card that has some sort of bug on it, grub, something like that, that needs a tree symbol. So you play that on top of the tree symbol. That tree symbol is now gone. You now have a grub. Well, you have a bird that wants to eat that grub. So now you can put the bird on top of that. And you're covering up symbols and kind of changing them as you go, hoping to build it out in such a way that when you hit that halfway point of the game, and you hit the halfway point, you switch from one set of cards to another set of cards, that now you're ready to make that jump immediately and be able to start playing down cards that might be predators. So you have your nice little bird. Well, the fox wants to eat it. You can put the fox on top of that. And then who knows? There might even be some stuff that are bigger. But fun engine building, or kind of tableau building, like I said, it just takes a while to play, especially with people learning the game. I think once you start to kind of get an idea of the game and the system, you might have an idea of how you want to handle it in the long run and be able to plan a little bit further. But you can't always do that, even if you are more familiar with the game. But it does one thing that I believe I already mentioned with Quadropolis that I really enjoy, where you're placing down a marker with a number 1, 2, 3, or 4 on it to determine what card you take. And you're blocking off a spot when you do that. So earlier on in the round, you have your choice of any card that you want, but later on, those choices keep on getting more and more limited. So that does help a little bit with the analysis paralysis. Then I believe this is 56 here. We have Galaxy Trucker. Galaxy Trucker is a real-time kind of game about building out a spaceship from basically parts you find in a junkyard. And you're doing that as fast as you can, trying to build out the best ship that you can. The thing that's going to get you cargo, keep the pirates off your back, help you avoid asteroids, all of those things. But also you want to do it quickly, because quicker you do it, then that all of a sudden kind of starts a countdown, and the other players are now going to have to work to finish theirs faster, maybe messing theirs up more. Of course, you say you're done with yours, well then you better hope you didn't mess it up, because it is very possible for an asteroid to come in. If you haven't planned it out correctly, blow up half your ship. Just y'all lose it, and now you're down to a couple engines, a gun, maybe a shield, and no cargo space. So, well, that was an unsuccessful venture on that flight. I think what makes this real-time game work is I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of real-time games. There, I believe, is one further up on the list than this. But like that one, like this one, you have part of the game that is real-time. Not the whole game. There's no like stressful timer of an app, say for Fuse, where it's just beeping, beeping. Oh, now it's getting faster. Oh my goodness, your time is running out. It's a game that doesn't have that normal stress that you get from a real-time game. Next up here at 55, we're going to have Pandemic. Now, Pandemic, this is Pandemic, Pandemic Legacy Season 1, and Pandemic Legacy Season 2, all clumped into one. Yes, there are differences, but for the most part, the core system is what I'm talking about here. And I mean, if I was just talking about base Pandemic, it wouldn't have made the list. I've played that one enough times. I feel like having played Legacy twice, as well as, well, Legacy Season 1 twice and Season 2 once, I want that story, that extra little bit to it. But even having played both of those before, I think it'd be fun to go back and play them again with a different group of people. Maybe sit back and my thought process is only on the mechanical side of the game, and just to see how other people explore and discover the game of Pandemic and of Pandemic Legacy. I just don't see myself, though, going back to the base game. I did pick up, and it's sitting over there, World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King, I believe it is, a Pandemic system game. So it uses some stuff that you could find in the various Pandemic games, and it's going to have some of that same DNA to it, but a different theme. There was also a Star Wars Clone Wars one that just came out that I would love to get my hands on as well, because I think Pandemic is a great gateway, family, introductory game. I just don't want to play the base version anymore. You give me something else with a theme like World of Warcraft, which I haven't actually played the video game, or Star Wars, which I enjoy a lot. That sounds more interesting to me. So this should be 54, I believe. 54, we're going to have Blood Rage, another one that has dropped a long ways. I think when I started out, Blood Rage was maybe my number 2 game of all time. Now, it's in the bottom half of my top 100. Some of that is, I think, just evolving or changing game taste. I'm not going to say evolving game taste because Blood Rage is still a really fun game. I'm not going to have it leave my collection probably ever because I enjoy playing it a lot. It's just not necessarily the area control game I'm going to pull off the shelf first if I want to do some big area control game. Nor is it necessarily as much the type of game that I'm just going to pull off the shelf all the time. But Blood Rage is a blast. This drafting and then some area control, some combat, but figuring out your strategy to either really build up your troops so you are ready for that combat, or to stay back and just kind of block up an area so that you can complete quests each age, or if you go with a Loki strategy, get into a fight and let everybody die, because that's what Loki does. So a lot of different strategies and a lot of fun ones to play around with for the game. Just talking about it right now makes me kind of want to play it, but it's it's not one that I'm necessarily pulling off off the shelf all the time now. Welcome Fatal, and yes, top 100 games. I always have overlays. And then, let's see, I believe we are down to 53. We'll see. We'll figure it out when we get there. Yeah, I believe this is 53. We have Root. Root is another one that has dropped some, and that's mainly just because I haven't played it that much recently. Why? Because Root is a tough game to get to the table. It is an absolute blast when you do. And fair. Makes sense that you wanted to call them out in live. Yes, for my top 100 list, I try and be fancy and plan ahead a little bit. But Root is basically a war game, an asymmetric war game where each faction is doing something different. And I don't have everything for Root. I am missing the newest stuff and like some of the fancy stuff. But yeah, I haven't played my copy. I've only played other people's. I did hear that, so Root, like I said, is an asymmetric war game that you generally need 3, probably 4 people to play, and everybody has to know how everybody else's faction works. There is the Clockwork expansion that gives you a suspect, from what I've heard, solo version of the game. But I've also heard that in the latest stuff that came out, it offers an actual solo version that works a whole lot better. Plus, there is a very good digital implementation, I've been told. I own it, I haven't played it yet, for Root, where you can learn how to play all the characters. It's a great way to learn the game, and that's probably going to be the best spot to play it solo. Maybe that's one of them I should stream coming up here sometime. Just maybe show off that app a little bit. Then, let's see, 52. 52, we're going to have Draftosaurus. Equally as big a game. Now, a much smaller game than Root. Draftosaurus is not a roll and write, but it feels like a roll and write in a lot of ways. In this game, you have a handful of dinosaur meeples, and you pick one, and you're placing it on a board, which that board and how the different areas score really has a roll and write feel to it. You might be wanting to get pairs of animals. If you get a pair of animals, it's worth 5 points, say, at the end of the game. I don't remember what it is. Or you might be collecting as many of a type of animal as you can, or maybe you want in the pen it to go every other animal, or it could be a pen where only herbivores work. Actually, I don't know that they do that for this one. But could be a number of different things. Or maybe you only want one of this type of animal on your board. And if you can pull it off, it's worth like 10 points. Something like that. So you might want to save that one for later in the game, but of course everybody else can see what you're doing or potentially doing and might not pass that to you. A game I think takes 15 minutes. Even like I played it at Gen Con at one of the demo tables, and I had played it before. I didn't need a rules refresher. Could have just sat down and played. There was one other person who joined me who they played or hadn't played before, so they learned the game, sat down, taught the game, or the demoer taught the game. We probably played with the teach in 20 minutes, 25 minutes maybe. So the game is super fast, but really fun. And it's one of those, I like it because you have the little dinosaur meeples, you're drafting those, kind of passing them around in hidden handfuls. It just works well, works for a fun, simple experience. Then Here we are at number 51. Last one in the bottom half of my top 100 games of all time, 2022 edition. And we have Homebrewers. Homebrewers is a fun engine building game. I think a fun engine building game that not enough people know about. My guess is it's probably out of print at this point. It came out in 2019 around Gen Con. I didn't get my hands on it at Gen Con. I got my hands on it after the fact, but Homebrewers is a lot of fun. It probably helps also that I brew beer and I like to drink beer. I mean, I'm drinking whiskey now, but in this game, you're buying cards, you're getting grain, you're brewing beer, and those cards are different flavorings that you can slot in. And those flavorings might give you more money to buy more cards or to manipulate your dice or do something else with it. There's one who can pay, I believe, $1, maybe $2 to add an extra die every time. And you just basically continue to add different ingredients to your different types of beers, pushing them up tracks, because you reach the top, you're at the highest spot, you're scoring more points when it comes to Summerfest and Oktoberfest. Plus, I mean, this does come back to my enjoyment of beer, but you're looking at the end of the game and going like, okay, would I actually drink an IPA with these ingredients in it? Sometimes the answer is, well, I've yet to reach a time where the answer is not yes, but sometimes it's like, I would only want a little taster, because if it's too much, then yeah, no. An oyster IPA, a smoked oyster IPA, I would try. It sounds disgusting, but I would still try it. I just don't want a full pint. So there we have it. The bottom half of my top 100 games. Just to quickly go over 60 through 51 again. We have Long Shot the Dice game. This is a betting horse racing game with some fun mechanics. Probably would be higher if it was a little bit easier to teach. At 59, we are going to have Trek 12. And this one is about climbing mountains, but really it's about creating sets and runs of numbers to score as many points as you can, with a really interesting way to pick like the different numbers that you can have on your board. 58, we have The Night Cage, a horror-themed game where you are trapped in a labyrinth trying to find keys and then a portal to get out before your candle, the only thing that is giving you light, burns out, and in the guttering flame, the last flicker, you see the wax-eater monster descend upon you. 57, we're going to have Meadow. This is much happier game, and this one is going to be basically building out a tableau of cards to play more cards, to basically be you seeing more and more of nature as you go in an attempt to score points, take pictures, scenery, find these locations where, well, I mean, really it's just to get you to score points with some fun mechanics in there. Then at 56, we have Galaxy Trucker, a real-time space delivery game where you're building a spaceship as fast as you can, hoping that as you take off and fly into space, you've done enough to deal with the monsters, or deal with the pirates and asteroids that are going to be coming to get you, and you have enough cargo space to be able to fill up your ship. At 55, we have Pandemic. This is every Pandemic, Pandemic Legacy, Seasons 1 and 2, and Base Pandemic. So I guess not every Pandemic, but the ones that I've played, I really enjoy all of them. Base Pandemic is a great way to play a cooperative game about curing diseases and keeping them in check around the world to see if you can do it before, well, everything breaks down. 54, we have Blood Rage, a drafting kind of area control, but more fighting or completing quests with this Viking theme to it. A lot of fun ways to win, just not one that I pull off the shelf quite as much anymore. At 53, we have Root, a asymmetric war game of woodland creatures. Ton of fun, really hard to get to the table just because, well, the game is a very big, complex game. You have to know what everybody else's characters are doing. At 52, we have Draftosaurus. In comparison, this is a really light game that feels like a roll and write where you're drafting dinosaur meeples and placing them in pens just to see how many points you can score. If everybody knows how to play the game, 10-15 minutes. And then at 51, we have Homebrewers. Homebrewers is going to be an engine building game about brewing beer, getting ingredients, and going up kind of your proficiency or your skill track on 4 different types of beers to try and be the highest and score the most points when it comes to Summerfest and Oktoberfest. But that's it. Those are the games that round out, like I said, the bottom half of my top 100 games. Coming up next week, on Monday, 8:30 again, I'm going to be going through 50 through 41. And then on Wednesday coming up here, so been watching previously, I've been doing Stars of Karios. That is still on the table. Not in terms of a game that I'm going to be showing, but it's still on the table, so I haven't gotten my next campaign set up yet, which is going to be Chronicles of Drunagor. But I do plan on probably streaming a solo game, though now that we were talking about Root in the chat, maybe that's going to be what I play. Do the digital version of Root. But join me then, or next Monday. I'm always live on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central. And then, let's see, 8:30 on Mondays. Yeah, I'm glad in some ways that I did not back the first printing of Chronicles of Drunagor, just because of the, well, I mean, it's such a big game. There's almost always going to be errata or update things that can come out. And now I don't have to worry about sorting them in, because I don't have them since I have the second printing. But with that, if you like this content, please give the video a thumbs up. If you're watching it after the fact, give a comment down below. Let me know which one of these games is the most interesting to you, or maybe one that you want to try. And if you want to find out what else I'm doing, well, for one, subscribe to this channel, click that notification bell, you'll know when I go live. But I also have nerdologists.com, where I'm posting articles every weekday about board games, anime, books, anything nerdy, as well as then my 10-Minute Marvel podcast coming out every Tuesday, where you can get Marvel news in a short, bite-sized time frame. That's probably going to be going up to 20-Minute Marvel, maybe 30-Minute Marvel, because I have a co-host coming on, not this week, but next week. So we're going to test that out and see how that goes, but it should be fun. So thank you for watching, and bottoms up.